Camp recap brought to you by Starland Sportsplex and Fun Park in Hanover. Day 9 of Patriots training camp. Alex Barth here. We got Evan Lazar in for Scott Zolak today, so we're really going to nerd out here for the next 10 or 15 minutes on the practice we just saw, Evan. They were back in pads today, final day of the block, so I thought a really intense practice. Yeah. We saw some 2-minute, we saw some red zone. I want to start, as the title suggests, though, with the wide receivers, ups and downs. I don't know that you could find a wide receiver, at least the main guys we talk about, who it wasn't a notable day for, but I know you have one guy in mind that you really want to talk about.
Yeah, Pop Douglas. Every time Pop Douglas is on the field, it just adds another dimension to this offense that they don't get from other players. Maybe Javon Baker will get there eventually because he does have that explosiveness and that twitch ability, but when you see Pop Douglas out there, even if he's not getting the ball, it just seems like his gravity does exist, and you see that from some of the better receivers in the league. So just talking to him after practice, it feels like he knows that durability is the only thing holding him back from being a big type contributor in this offense. If he can stay healthy, I truly feel like he could be a 1,000-yard guy someday.
Yeah, he's an explosive player. Jacoby Brissett called him a weapon the other day. He's a playmaker. There have been some decent receivers through here the last few years, but those guys are more chain movers, right? Guys like Jacoby Myers, right? Even Julian Edelman later in his career. Pop Douglas is a big play threat. Now, it's not necessarily throw it 60 yards, have him run under it, but it's the catch and run stuff. It's the ability to get himself into space where he can create from there. And you're seeing him add that dynamic here early in camp. Speaking of adding a dynamic, this was one I didn't see coming, but I think it's a positive development.
Yeah.
I don't remember, and maybe you can speak to this better than me, I don't remember KJ Osborne. I liked him in Minnesota, but I don't remember him being a big red zone guy in Minnesota. Now, they have some other really good red zone threats, but he was fine the first few days of camp, didn't necessarily stand out one way or the other, but as they've gotten into red zone work, he has been a regular feature in a good way in the red zone. He's among, I think, their leaders for touchdown catches so far this summer. And maybe that's, as a red zone option. They've struggled to throw the ball in the red zone the last few years. Is he maybe emerging as a red zone option?
Yeah, I think he's just emerging in general. Okay. Today, had the go ball from Jacoby Brissett in the 1-minute drill there at the end of practice. Was kind of the big play on that drive to get them into scoring range. And we've kicked around on Catch 22. Where does KJ Osborne fit into this mix? Today felt like a day where it was like, he's a lock on this roster. He's going to be here. He's going to be on this team. And the second point I'd make is that early on in the season, before Javon Baker and Jalen Polk are necessarily ready to take on a full-time role in this offense.
And if Kendrick Bourne's still hurt.
Right. My guess is that KJ Osborne is going to be out there a ton, especially on early downs before those rookies are ready to go, and maybe before Bourne is good to go as well, which is a good point, too.
I'm okay with that from what we've seen the last few days. I'm okay with that. Any thoughts real quick on the rookies before we get to some of the downs at receiver?
Well, I just think both rookies to me I keep saying the same thing, but it feels like they're just as advertised. Javon Baker is a little bit more streaky. But he has the flash or the highlight plays that we see here. Once every 2 days, he makes a catch that makes you go, wow. Yep. Whereas Jalen Polk just is a steady chain-moving presence. You mentioned a guy like Jacoby Myers. I feel like it's the same guy. He caught a pass from Drake May on the sideline today on a comeback route where it was all hands. Like, he had to go to the ground to get the ball, and you just see the hands stick out like this, and it's just magnets, right? And big hands that secure the catch. So I think that they have a kind of a good yin and yang there that they can develop with, and maybe Pop in the slot, and that's sort of the future. And I've liked that we've seen that a little bit in practice with Drake May and the twos. We have seen those three together. Not necessarily all the results there yet, but it's cool to see the future in these snapshots.
Well, since we're making this about the receivers, on the flip side, and I think part of the reason we saw more of that today, Tyquan Thornton not on the field. Came out later in the day, wasn't in pads, and we've been kind of, I don't want to say waiting for this, but everything with Tyquan having the good start to camp came with, but he's got to stay healthy. We don't know exactly why he wasn't out there today, but given his history, just him not participating, you take a little bit longer of a look at that.
Yeah, that's the big thing with him. We talk about it all the time. There's a role in this offense for him because they don't have a lot of speed on the outside. I like what I've seen out of KJ Osborne, and I'm hopeful for the future with Javon Baker. But with those two guys, it's not necessarily 4.28 speed. They're both kind of more 4.5 guys. Not that the 40 is everything, but you just look at that ability to truly take the top off the defense. And maybe it's even just gravity down the field to occupy a safety, or to run through coverage to be able to clear out a sideline route or something like that. In order to make those things happen, you have to have somebody that has some speed that the defense has to respect. And you mentioned Pop earlier is a little bit different in that regard, how he creates chunk plays.
More quickness than straight speed.
Right.
The one other guy I'll mention, because we're here to say what we saw today, Juju Smith-Schuster, he can't turn the corner. He can't. Yeah. He had a bad drop in the red zone from Drake May. There was another throw from Drake May in the 2-minute, which we'll get to, where I thought it was a decent throw if Smith-Schuster gets out of his break in time. He didn't. They're going to have to make a tough decision when it comes to him. I know Zoe said you got to eat the money. I don't even know if it's like a discussion anymore at this point.
No, it's not to me. And with Juju, what it looks to me like is receivers at the end of the road. Yeah. You see this a lot where it's not necessarily working on any level. Like he can't stay on his feet today, drops. And when you start seeing receivers drop the ball, that tells me that they're thinking a lot about the other elements of the route, where you're trying to get open, you're trying to get that juice to get going, and you're all of a sudden the ball's there and you're like, oh, whoa, they threw it to me, right? And then the drops start to manifest themselves. So that was the one nitpick I'd have today with the receivers or the pass catchers in general. Maybe a few too many drops.
Maybe. It's also the third day of 3 days in intense heat, and that stuff kind of slips. Let's talk about the quarterbacks. We'll start with Drake May. And again, this Patriots training camp recap is brought to you by Starland Sportsplex and Fun Park in Hanover. Real quick here, Evan. Drake May, good in red zone, goes to the 2-minute drill, or 1-minute drill it was today, and goes 3 and out. Do you feel like today was a step forward or a step back?
I still say step forward. I couch that though with the context of right now it's a lot of process over results for Drake May. And I get that people are going to go on the X machine and they're going to see his passing stats. I think he was, 3 for 11, whatever it was. I don't really put too much stock into those, but it doesn't look pretty on a box score. But what I am seeing out of him is a little bit more decisiveness and confidence in what he's doing. And the one thing I think is worth mentioning in terms of context is what they're doing to him, to me, is trying to turn him into a layup quarterback, where they're going to make him operate on time and structure in the short game by blitzing him, by playing 2 high safety shells. They know that he can throw the ball down the field, and they know he can play make with his legs and extend plays. What they're asking him to do is operate in structure or on schedule within the confines of the offense, and force him to kind of play left-handed almost in a way.
Which good. Make the kid develop a change up, make the kid develop a left hand. And he talked about it yesterday. He wants to throw the ball down the field. The defense isn't giving it to him. He doesn't want to force into bad looks, which is mature. You like to see that. Eventually, the process does have to turn into results, but a couple balls dropped today on receivers from his throws, so the numbers maybe don't reflect it. How do you feel about Jacoby Brissett? Great,
honestly. I mean, I don't know if it's a very high bar, but the quarterback play we've seen from the last 2 days of Jacoby Brissett's as good as I've seen since Brady here. Okay. Just really aggressive and confident in this offense, and you can tell. And what I also just really like about Brissett is his fire and his energy and his leadership. You can definitely tell that just watching practice, just how into it he is, and how good of a teammate he is. Look, he's one of those guys that is never going to set any completion percentage records. He's not going to be somebody that's going to dice it up and be extremely consistent with it. But in Cleveland in 2022 and in some of these practices, we do see the ability to throw the ball down the field accurately. And that's what I keep seeing from Jacoby Brissett in these practices. I mean, he makes a really nice throw to end practice to Hunter Henry, where he just kind of puts it up into a spot and makes Henry run underneath it. Those types of plays are there with Jacoby Brissett. We saw it yesterday, maybe a little bit more on the throws to Pop up the seams, that he was able to just kind of let it go and uncork it in there. So his confidence and his decisiveness, aggressiveness in this offense is standing out to me, and he's doing his job all around of being that bridge quarterback for the short term in terms of on the field, and then also being the leader and the mentor off the field too.
I do want to add one quick note on the defense here. I thought Matthew Judon was really good today. Played with a ton of energy. Didn't look like a guy that was being forced to be out there. So just as we've kind of checked in on that daily on the show, I think it was a really encouraging day, both in terms of results. He had a run stuff, he had a sack, and then just some of the energy you saw from in between plays was really good. Evan, day off tomorrow. They come back Monday. We're into a game week. What are you looking for next week going into the game?
Well, for Drake May, it's obviously continue to make strides and continue to just take those profits. Like, don't be afraid to take a profit. That's always a quarterback one-on-one type of thing. I think the other thing that I would like to see is what are they going to roll into the preseason with along the offensive line in front of him, because he's going to play in the preseason. I don't know how much Jacoby Brissett's going to play, but Drake May is going to play. And that's the one little thing that I thought today, that maybe holding the ball a little bit too much, like some practice sacks. You never know if they would actually get him on the ground or not. So I always hate labeling them sacks, but pressures or would-be sacks. So those are the things that you might want to clean up going into the game.
This Patriots training camp recap is brought to you by Starland Sportsplex and Fun Park in Hanover. That's Evan Lazar. He'll have more coverage on Patriots.com. Myself, Matt Dolph, we've you covered on 98.5, thesportshub.com. No show tomorrow with the off day. Monday, Zoe and I will actually be over at Patriots Place for Chalk Talk with Greg Bedard. If you want to head over to the Dean College stage, you can check that out at 1:30. It will be Mark Bertrand and Matt Dolph on here at 2 o'clock to give you the training camp recap. So again, that's all coming up Monday. To make sure you get it, be sure to subscribe to the Sports Hub YouTube page. Follow the Sports Hub on Twitter. You can also find replays of these on YouTube and on the Sports Hub Patriots audio feed, wherever you get your podcast. So until Monday, get ready to enjoy the off day. He's Evan Lazar. I'm Alex Barth. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.